Hi folks, welcome back. I've missed you. It's been a week. My name is Santo Sessa with RE/MAX Premier. I have your latest home prices and insights. I'm going to explain what's been going on in the city of Toronto for week ending November 15th. Now we've changed the format up a little bit. Today on Tuesdays, I'm talking about just the city of Toronto. I'm breaking down detached semis, towns, and condos. And in 2 days on Thursdays, I'm going to be talking about only the York region and the major cities across the York region and what's happening there with the different home types. So 2 videos a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays. You're going to have your fill of what's going on with home prices in the GTA area. Today though, just Toronto. Do me a favor, take a second, hit the subscribe button. We love it when people subscribe. It kind of validates that you're interested in what I'm doing. Share the video if you have to. Let people know what's going on. Hit the like button, and that way you're reminded when these videos come up. And please comment below whatever's on your mind. Just put it in the comment, and you can tell I respond to just about all the comments. Okay, let's get started. We're talking about City of Toronto, starting off with detached properties. Okay, so when we look at sales for week ending November 15th, we sold 188 detached properties. Look, we're up by 1. Let's just say they're the same compared to the previous week. When we look at the yellow here is detached homes that sold at $2 million or more. It's up by 1 also, so it's basically the same. But the previous weeks, we were at 62, 50, 53 over here. And so with a lot less properties here selling at $2 million or more, we expect average sold price to, that's going to have a downward pressure on average sold price. Well, and that's what we're seeing. We were much higher here. We're a little bit lower, closer to today. Now, from the previous week to November 15th, which is the last week, average sold price went up by $10,000. So not a lot. Again, let's just say it's the same. Average sold price for detached home in Toronto last week was $1,436,000. If these numbers are important to you, you should not base any decision, or even just when you're talking, on a weekly basis, because people are going to think you're crazy, that they're up 1 week, they're down the next, they're up, they're down, what's going on? Let's kind of look at the overall trend. So what I've done is I've started the year off March 8th because that's just before we went into the lockdown. So we had a high for most home types. So for detached, the average selling price for week ending March 8th was $1,645,000. Now, we went into the lockdown, everything went down. Coming out of the lockdown, pent-up demand, lots of action. So for a couple months coming out, we saw some of our higher prices. But in the middle here, over July, August, September, October, let's just say we've kind of normalized. Let's just say that. I know that our life right now is far from normal, but we're getting more comfortable with things. We're getting more comfortable living with this health crisis until they can fix, the authorities can fix everything with vaccines and all that. That's another story. But we're going to call this the normalization period here. And when you really kind of step back and look at it, in this section here, we've never really come back to pre-lockdown prices. We were close a few times, but it does look like average sold price, when you kind of visually average it out in your head, the highs and the low, average sold price tends to just slightly be sloping down. So I would say for detached, average sold prices are coming down a little bit. Compared to last year, we're almost 9% higher when it comes to average sold prices, and then it fluctuates. You know, we were 9% higher a couple weeks back. We were almost 22% higher here, middle of October, but right now we're sitting at 9% higher than where we were last year. Sales, a little bit less than what we were last year. We sold 188 last week. 52% of them sold at list price or more. So think about it. Half of the detached homes sold at list price or more. And I'm stressing that because if you've not been in the market for a long time, where you've not bought or sold, well, you're going to be surprised. The attitude of that's the list price. Let me, negotiate down. It's not the case. For half of the properties, they sold at list price or more. It's important you're working with a good realtor that could let you know if that price you should be negotiating up or you should be negotiating down. Listings, we're listing more, not a lot. We're listing a bit more than what we've listed last year at this time. 301 new detached listings came on the market, and listings each week are starting to slope down, which is seasonal. We see that as we get into the colder months, listings tend to come down, sales tend to come down. Months of inventory dropped just slightly to 2 months of inventory. That helps explain why the average sold price went up slightly, but we are sitting in a seller's market, and it's a decent seller's market. It's not crazy like it used to be in the days where it was down less than 1 month of inventory, but 2 months of inventory is still a strong seller's market. Looking at semis, sales did drop from 89 down to 60. The amount of semis that sold at 1.5 million or more also dropped by about half. Now, before we were as high as 22 semis selling at 1.5 million. The last couple of weeks we're at 17 and 18, but last week we only sold 8 semis at 1.5 million or more, and for sure that has an effect on average sold price, bringing it down, and the amount that average sold price dropped is quite a bit. So last week the average sold price was 1,118,000. That's over $100,000 drop from the previous week. That doesn't mean, relax for a second, it doesn't mean your semi is worth $100,000 less. It's just the volume of semis that were purchased this week compared to last week, the average sold price is lower. For the previous few weeks though, we've seen semi prices climb and climb and climb and climb. But let's kind of take a step back. Pre-lockdown, the high was sitting at 1,257,000. When we came out of the lockdown, we were above those numbers, and we'll call that the crazy pent-up demand area. But as we normalize, you can see here that we've never really made it back to the pre-lockdown price. But it's hard to tell if it's going up or down. It kind of looks like it's pretty steady. You know, we go up to a little bit over 1.2, we drop down to 1.1. You know, it's just kind of pretty steady there. It all depends on which semis are being bought and sold. So average sold price of semis has stayed pretty consistent compared to last year. Well, for this particular week, we're down 0.9%, so pretty much the same. It's crazy though, the week before we were almost 18% higher than last year's price, but average it out, you can see what I mean by it's pretty steady. The average sold price of semis. When it comes to sales, we sold 60 last week, only 60 in all of the city of Toronto. Now, of those 60, 62% sold at list price or more. So close to, 2/3 sold at list price or more. So there's lots of action, lots of competition. Listings every single week we're listing less and less, but we are listing more than what we sold, that when we listed last year. The orange is 2020 and the blue is 2019. And months of inventory. Well, months of inventory went up a little bit. Average sold price did come down. Now, for the amount of months of inventory increased compared to the amount that average sold price dropped, it's really not much of a correlation, because we're still very much sitting in a seller's market. Hey, average sold price drop, it's just a combination of which semis got sold this week versus the previous week. But semis sitting at 1.3 months of inventory, lots of competition, lots of action when it comes to semis. Townhouses. Okay, so sales went up slightly just by 2. So in all of the city of Toronto, I know it's hard to believe, but only 27 townhouses were purchased last week. Average sold price did drop by quite a bit, around 140,000. It's a big drop in average sold price. When we look at pre-lockdown, the high pre-lockdown was 1,063,000. Well, We came out of the lockdown and we completely destroyed that number. We've been doing far more when it comes to average sold price than what we did pre-lockdown. And for the majority of the year, even in the normalization period, we've been higher than the pre-lockdown average sold price when it comes to townhouses. So townhouses generally is strong. Although last week, you're going to think, wow, it came down quite a bit. It did, but it went up previous week. It's been going up and down, but it's pretty strong. Well, compared to last year, we're 4% higher, 3.8% higher than what we were last year, 17% higher the week before. It does fluctuate, but we're generally much higher than we were last year's average sold price for townhouses. Sales, very similar for the last few weeks than what we've been selling last year. And listings, we are listing more townhouses this year at this time than what we've listed last year. 44 got listed last week. Months of inventory. Months of inventory has come down to 1.6 months of inventory. Now remember, when we're below 4 months of inventory, that's a seller's market. This is very strong. Whenever you're down here kind of at the bottom, it's a very strong seller's market. There's lots of competitions with townhouses, especially that there's not very many on the market, not very many being listed. So there's lots of competition with townhouses. Condos. Condos seems to be on everybody's radar. Even if you're not looking to buy or sell condos, it's just something that everybody seems to be talking about. Okay, so, and I'm sorry in advance if I'm not telling you what you think is happening with condos, but I'm telling you exactly what's happening with condos right now. Sales went up. We sold 220 condos last week, where the previous week was 198. The amount of condos sold at $1 million or more also went up. We sold 18 condos at $1 million or more. Average sold price dropped by $10,000. So let's just say it kind of stayed the same, because the $10,000, up or down is really not much. The average condo last week sold for $873,000. Let's take a step back. Pre-lockdown, we were at an average of $711,000 per condo. We went into the lockdown, everything dropped. We came out, we basically were doing a little better than, or very similar to pre-lockdown prices. In the normalization period, we kind of have seen both things. We went up higher than pre-lockdown. Now we've been consistently lower than pre-lockdown prices, but we're not, with all the news you're hearing, you figured we'd be much, much lower. We're not that much lower. Condo prices have been pretty consistent, and there's different ways of explaining that, and I'll get into that shortly. Compared to last year, hey, we're a little bit higher. We're 4% higher than where we were at this time for last year's average sold price with condos, which is also consistent with where we were the previous week. We're also 4%, 3.9% actually. The week before that, though, we were less. The week before that, we were up again. So it fluctuates, but pretty steady there so far with condo prices. 220 were purchased. We did 220 condo sales last week. Last year at this time, though, it was 319. So there's a big difference what we're buying this year versus what we're buying last year. We're buying much less this year. And of these 220, 26% sold at list price or more. Now, there's still some competition out there for the condos that are priced extremely well, but 26% selling at list price or more, that percentage is much lower than a lot of the other market, than all the other market types that we've spoken about. 220 were bought. We're listing 735. So the average, the amount of listings every week is starting to decline. We're seeing that in the other home types also, which is normal. But I want you to pay attention. I want to pay attention to something here. We bought 220 condos last week. Yes, we listed 735, and there's a big discrepancy versus what we're buying and what we're listing. You can see the volume creeping up there. But let's look at active listings. That's a more important number than how many are being listed. If we go back to October 18th, we had 5,834 active listings. Then it dropped down the next week to 5,000, almost 5,600. Now, by active listing, I mean how many are actually available for sale at the end of the week. So we look at how many we're buying and how many is for sale, and we could kind of calculate months of inventory that way. Well, over 5,800, 5,600, just under 5,500, 5,400, 5,351. So active listings, although still high, is dropping week by week by week. And we look at sales. Sales have actually, for the last 3 weeks, have gone up. Well, these is kind of close, but it went up. Active listings is coming down. Well, months of inventory now starts to come down. We were in a buyer's market earlier, and now we're more in a balanced market at 5.6 months of inventory for condos. So you'll notice that in some buildings for condos, there's a ton of properties for sale, and probably the months of inventory in that building could be as high as 7 months and 8 months. And then there's other buildings, there's very few condos available for sale. Months of inventory in that building, and it's probably a more favorable building, is probably sitting at a seller's market type of situation. And here's what I see happening out there when it comes to condos, because prices have not really come down the way people expect. Prices have not come down the way is being promoted out there. I'm seeing people that are buying condos that instead of buying something for 500 square feet, 600 square feet, they're buying 700 and 800 square feet because those prices have come down. So the overall price point's a little bit more, which helps to keep average sold price higher. I'm also, you got to understand also that condos in the $500,000 and $600,000 range, they are entry level. So if you're a first-time home buyer, you're not buying a detached house at $1.4 million. You're not buying a semi at $1 million or $1.2 million. You're looking at the condo market. And if you've been saving for years to get into your own property, now as prices have kind of come down a little bit, but more importantly, attitudes, public attitudes, everybody, everywhere you go, people saying condo prices are down, you tend to believe it. And your attitude is, oh, the bank also, their interest rates are lower, so you can afford more now. You're jumping in, if you're a first-time home buyer, into the condo, so that's helping to keep prices higher. If you are an empty nester, you've got your big detached, your kids have moved out, you're all alone in this big detached, and prices are great with detached, you're selling high and you're buying low in the condo. So there is some movement in a condo market, and all we need is a couple of good announcements like immigration, or we have a vaccine, or anything positive, and public attitude could have people jumping into the condo game again. And sellers thinking, hey, prices are going to be better in a few months, they might not be putting their condo on the market now. They're holding off, which means active listings is going to come down even lower, which means more pressure on condo prices to come back up again. I'm not saying for sure that's going to happen. All I'm saying is it's a very fickle market. The downward pricing on condos, and you could read the comments below. Some people are thinking doom and gloom that, wow, we're going to get condos for free. Might not happen. So far, it hasn't happened. My name is Santo Sessa with RE/MAX Premier. Hope you enjoyed this market report for week ending November 15th. We'll see you in a couple of days for the York region. Have a great day.